Hey everyone, John here from All Miniatures Great and Small, and this is going to be something a little different. I'm doing a tournament recap, and just to let you know, this video will be broken up into two parts. The first part I'll cover day one, and the second part will cover day two, and that's going to be exclusive on Patreon and YouTube membership. So you can check out the join and the Patreon link down in the comments below. So I recently attended Shifting Sands 2024 in Mesa, Arizona over the weekend, and I thought I'd give you guys a report. So this is going to be a little bit different format than what I normally do. It's more of a kind of a podcast format. I did take pictures during the battle, but really it's just going to be me chit-chatting about what went down. So without further ado, let's talk about Shifting Sands a little bit. This event was run by one of our longtime attendees, and the theme that he decided on was Team Yankee Red Dawn. So we're talking the invasion of America in 1986. If you've seen the Red Dawn movie from the 80s with Patrick Swayze, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hopefully you missed the recent remake with Chris Hemsworth. But I digress. So that's the theme of it. For those who don't know, Team Yankee is just a 1980s hypothetical World War III, Cold War gone hot. So kind of the theme of the battle is, you know, there are Russian forces that drop in, so you're going to see a lot of VDV forces, which are the basically Russian air mobile, Cuban forces, things like that, line Russian troops, and then you're going to see second tier American formations. All the really good Abrams and those things are over in Europe. Canadians are an option. I don't know if anyone took Canadians or not. So that's kind of the theme. Now the tournament itself, the rules for the tournament were it's going to be a 5-mission tournament over 2 days. So first day, 3 games, second day, 2 games. The points value was 80 points, and you could take up to 2 formations in your list. Certain units were outlawed. No M1A1s, no T64s or T80s or BMP3s, no Leo 2s for the Canadians. So, you know, like I said, the top tier stuff isn't available. We're playing with more second tier stuff. The missions that we played on turn 1 were Annihilation, or you could switch out Airborne. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Dust Up and Encounter, and then day 2 was Scouts Out and Free for All. So the terrain was provided by our tournament organizer as well as some of the players, and we'll kind of talk about that as well. So that's kind of the format of the game. Now I think there was only 12 players that came, if I am remembering correctly. We had a good contingent of locals, and then we actually had, it was real pleasant, a group coming out from El Paso and Albuquerque, so Texas and New Mexico, made the drive over. I think El Paso is about 6 hours from Phoenix, maybe a little bit further. And so that was really nice. Our tournament organizer decided to kind of break up the sides, if you will, into out-of-towners versus locals, which in one respect I really like. That means I wouldn't have to be playing Tom, Sean, or Mark, you know, fellas you might have seen in various battle reports that are local here and on the channel, because I play them all the time. I mean, I love playing them, but in the tournament it's cool to play new people. So that was neat, but the downside of that was it kind of killed the red versus blue of the tournament, and with that, kind of our narrative. We didn't have a we didn't have a Firestorm board or anything like that to control the narrative. So the narrative was just kind of the missions that we were playing. The first mission, like I said, was Annihilation. Now, I'm going to go on record, and I said it there, Annihilation is not my favorite mission. Annihilation is basically no objectives. It's just you got to kill the other guy off the table or break his formations to win. So it's an interesting thing. And then we had the option of airborne drop for any of the Soviets. And it turns out we weren't going to use or switch over to the airborne drop mission. It was just that the Soviets could use the airdrop deployment. Um, no one, I believe, no one used that option just because they would be dropping in front of non-bailed out NATO forces, and that could be ugly. Now, for the tournament, I guess I should talk about what I brought. I brought an LAV company. So that's a U.S. Marine company. Now, there's a separate video where I go through my list in detail. I'll put a link down there in the video description below. But basically, if you don't listen to that or don't want to listen to that, I'll just go over my list really quickly. So an LAV is a light attack vehicle. It's kind of an amphibious, 8-wheeled vehicle with a 25 millimeter gun and a turret on the top. I had an HQ of 2 LAV-25s, 3 platoons of 4 LAV-25s. Also in the core formation, I had 2 LAV mortar tracks. So they had 81 millimeter mortars in the LAV, and 4 LAV ATs, which have kind of the tow launcher and a hammerhead on the turret instead of the turret. So they get the juicy hammerhead rule. They're a lot harder to hit when they're shooting in cover. LAVs only have a front armor of 1, so cover and being 4 to hit is going to have to be their armor. That's the core formation. Outside of the core formation, I'm taking a Marine rifle platoon with an added Dragon team, 5 M60 Pattons, the Marine version, not the Army version. 2 of the LAV ADs, which are air defense. Nice multi-purpose. It has a Stinger, it has a Gatling gun, but only 2 of them because they are pricey. I also have in air support 4 Harriers, Marine Harriers at 6 points. It's a no-brainer. And 4 Cobras. I justified and hemmed and hawed for a while whether I was just going to take 2 or 4, but I ended up taking 4. And then outside of the Marines, I'm taking a unit of militia. So yes, I'm bringing the Wolverines and Patrick Swayze into the mix as well, and my list comes to exactly 80 points. All right, so with that said, the tournament we started, and I drew an opponent. He was actually local, but somewhat local. Arizona is a big state, so he lives kind of far away. And typically, I only see him at tournaments, and he's very pleasant. He and his son both play the game, so it always reminds me of me and my son. Both he and his son attended. My son, Jake, was still in California being a goofball. So that was nice. So his name was Justin, and he brought a U.S. cavalry company. So round 1 was Annihilation. The Annihilation lets you deploy everything on the table, which is nice. And I believe we have a roll-off, and I got the first turn. I believe it was meeting engagement, so no, moving rate of fire. You can't bring in air. You can't fire artillery on turn 1. So not too bad. So my opponent, Justin, he was running U.S. Armored Cav. So he had an HQ of an Abrams. I think he had a platoon of 3, just M1s, and then 5 platoons of 2-unit Bradleys. I think he also had a couple of Apaches, if I remember correctly, but that was really about it. He did not have any anti-air besides some anti-helicopter on his basic units, right? So going in the matchup, I thought it was pretty good. The Abrams are the scariest thing in the list because they are hard to, with front armor 18, I believe. For the base Abrams, it's even hard for the Patton with anti-tank of 20 to hurt them. But I kind of pushed up my right flank with my tanks, as well as a couple of LAV platoons and my HQ to help with remounting if things bailed out. And then I pushed my infantry, supported by an LAV platoon and backed up by my anti-tank lavs on my left-hand side. Now, unfortunately, Justin's list wasn't meant to take a lot of losses with two team units. Those Bradleys only have two Bradleys in each unit. You only need to kill or bail one of them to force a test. And with U.S. Army, they run on a 4+. So I knew, and I've played them in the past, so I know their weaknesses. Um, so I just pushed forward up the right flank. I did lose um, a couple of LAVs that I pushed forward, but LAVs only cost a point, and as long as I keep my core formation okay or healthy, it's okay to take a risk. Um, if I lose 4 LAVs and bail out a couple of Bradleys, that's a good trade point wise, and I'll take it. Um, on the right hand flank, my Pattons pulled up, my LAVs kind of moved through wheat fields for concealment, and I started hurting those Bradleys. Eventually, they broke and ran. The Abrams that he had in the center um, pushed over to the right to kind of support those Bradleys. They did manage to knock out a Patton, but I think that was about it. But by pushing them out, it let the Patton shoot from the front, and it let some of the LAV anti-tank guns shoot from the side. Uh, his helicopters did come in, but a wave of Harriers gunned them down out of the skies. And basically my Harriers were unopposed at that point, and so were my Cobras. So they just kind of made gun runs on the back of Bradleys and fired toes at the Abrams. And eventually we got everything killed in Justin's list. We took light losses, so it turned out to be an 8-1 victory for me. I did feel bad. Justin did have some bad luck, and especially with like morale rolls. I probably only killed about 4 or 5 Bradleys, and the rest just ran away. And the Abrams are hard, but once they're kind of in the middle, you can't have front armor everywhere. So either the Pattons are going to be getting side shots, or the Apaches, or the toes on the Laws, and then infantry can get close enough to assault anything that might get bailed out. So there you go. That was round 1, 8-1. How did my list perform? Pretty well, but I designed it to fight Soviets, and here I was fighting Americans. Not ideal. I loved playing Justin. He was a great opponent, but I was a little disappointed that it was a blue-on-blue fight. We figured that maybe there were, a sleeper cell took over an army base, and these were Soviets that were commanding the army vehicles. So, we tried to justify this with a little headcanon. And again, it was a fun battle, and thanks to Justin, he is always a great opponent, he and his son. I didn't get to play his son, but hopefully, since he's somewhat local, we'll be able to get together and play at some point. So thanks, Justin, for the game, and I'm sure you'll get me next time. All right, so that was round 1. Round 2 was going to be Dust Up, and I got to play against Vince, who, spoiler alert, I think he ultimately won the tournament. He was bringing a Cuban, I think, T-55s, along with some VDV in support. So I think it was like 2 companies split up that way. So a lot of T-55s. Not a good matchup against LAVs, but you got to work with what you're given. This was played on a pretty open board, and this is kind of a reoccurring theme on the tournament. And the battle mat was kind of neon green. It gave me a headache staring at it too long. It was kind of unpleasant to look at. I'm not going to complain too much about it, though, because I did not provide a table of terrain myself, because at that point I didn't know if I was going to be staying for 2 days, and I didn't want to haul it all in. So I can't complain too much about it. But I apologize for the pictures. It is a little garish, if you will. So again, we were playing Dust Up, which is table quarters. I think Vince won the roll-off. He picked a table quarter, so I was in the opposite table quarter. And then you kind of go from there, and you're capturing objectives. You can win on any turn. The danger of this mission is if you don't have the first turn, you can really potentially lose pretty quickly. There are reserves on there. I think I held off my patents, which I usually do, 2 platoons of LAVs and the mortars. And then I think he had a T-55 company as well as some infantry in there as well. But exciting battle. Vince was really a fun guy to play. He really knows his stuff. He's played at a lot of tournaments, and he's pretty good. The battle basically became, in the top half of the board, my top half of the board, I always describe from my vantage point, he pushed his T-55s up north and then through the center of town, heading towards the closest objective to him, which was kind of in my bottom center, covered somewhat by Marine rifle, my Marine rifles. Now, the way that setup was, I couldn't like completely envelop or bubble the objective. I could just kind of tow in to the objective and hold it a little bit. So he could get pretty close to it and potentially push me off in one turn if I had a bad, assault phase, and win the game really quickly. I had my Apaches kind of off in the corner, the top, kind of the top left corner, just out of range of his air, but he was charging towards me with T-55s. The Cobras did stellar work. Every turn, I think almost every turn, they hit 3 out of 4 times, and they destroyed 2 of the 3 that they hit. The problem was Vince just had a lot of them. He had 3 platoons of 7, I believe. So I did kill quite a lot of T-55s with the Cobras. He did strategically use his smoke to screen out my LAV ATs, the ones that were equipped with tows. They were in my back corner, providing kind of overwatch fire, but they were screened out the first 2 turns because of smoke. And that that meant that I wasn't killing quite as many T-55s as I'd hoped. Eventually, the battle came down to him assaulting my Marine platoon with his T-55s. He managed to pin them down and push them off. Now, this was delayed reserves, so he assaulted on turn. He got down there, was machine gunning them on turn 3, and I think he started on turn 2. I didn't get reserves until turn 6, which was 1 turn too late, unfortunately. So he was able to come in, push me off the objective. I wasn't able to counterattack. I failed it, even though it was, I think it was still a 4-up for the rifle platoon to counterattack. But I didn't have my company commander in range to supply a reroll. The board was so open that if I had put my LAV commander to try to give a reroll, the T-55s would have just blasted him to bits. They didn't need much. The Pattons, if the Pattons had come in just 1 turn earlier, we figured that would have changed the whole dynamic of the game. Not that I necessarily would have won, but I would have saved my objective and prolonged the game. Now, one of the nice things was, since that happened so quickly, Vince was a fast player, and I'd come to turn with my list, so I wasn't my usual slow self. I still wasn't exhausted yet. We decided to keep playing just for fun. And that was something that was really awesome from Vince, and I really appreciate it. Again, great guy. He was one of the Texas contingent. So we kept playing. My Pattons did come in, and the T-55s that had victoriously taken the objective were completely annihilated by, you know, my Pattons coming in. My reserve LAVs came in and shot up his anti-aircraft and his artillery. So, I mean, that was pretty good. But on my back objective, he stormed it with his reserve T-55 platoon. He brought in his helicopters full of infantry, ran up some infantry, and more than likely he would have eventually captured that one unless my Pattons could have gotten over there fast enough. But, you know, at that point we were just playing for fun to see what would happen. And, you know, then that's ultimately what Team Yankee in games like this is about. You're there to have fun, see little tanks explode on the battlefield, meet new people, and all of that was accomplished in this battle. So although I lost 1-8, it was a lot of fun. So again, thanks to Vince, and you know, the game of Dust Up was done. Round 3 was Encounter, and I was going to be playing against another American force. This time an M113 armored cavalry troop, which is you know, can be pretty scary. It's a pretty good list. Again, it was one of the Texas contingent I would be playing. Very nice guy, very pleasant battle. The mission was Encounter. Now, I'm going to go on record here and say Encounter is not one of my favorite missions, and I'm sorry to sound like a broken record because I don't like Annihilation either, round 1. And there's some reasons why. I just in Encounter, I can find that leads to static gameplay. This is true in Team Yankee and especially in Flames of War 2, where two forces are facing off against each other. Eventually, someone's got to blink and make a move to get to the other side of the table and take an objective. But a lot of times that's just throwing yourself, you know, on the enemy's spears, because you have to, with the even numbers, you have to push and attack. And then it immediately puts the opponent in a defensive position. So the attacker has to take a huge risk at, you know, usually worse odds to win the game. And a lot of times, you know, if you get two timid players or two players who have lists that aren't really geared towards attacking, you have a stalemate and you end with a lot of draws, which is never as much fun as, you know, a decisive. I'd rather lose than have a draw. So with that said, another thing that's going to add to the difficulty of this mission, as I explain it, is the table itself. Now, this table wasn't bad. You know, it's a desert table, so we're imagining we're now somewhere in New Mexico or maybe down in Tucson here in Arizona. But, you know, it's a desert table. The defining feature of this table, it's very much set up for defense. Now, Encounter's a lengthwise table, so both players deploy on opposite sides of the 6-foot length of the table. And then the 60%'s on the table, 40%'s in delayed reserves, delayed and scattered reserves, sorry. And so you start rolling on turn 3, you're going to get something no matter what by turn 5. But there's a river that my opponent wanted to play as impassable, so that was fine. We had a bridge across the middle, and we had a ford on my left-hand side that units could cross. Otherwise, the water is impassable unless you have amphibious. A lot of my units are amphibious, but it's still a cross-check. There were a lot of escarpments on either side of the river kind of facing that way, which are natural kind of defensive positions, because you can go hull down on an escarpment and you know, get concealment while shooting down at your opponents. So there was a couple of escarpments on either side of the river just kind of facing each other, as well as some woods and some lower hills and a scattering of buildings in the center. So with that said, you know, I said he had a M113 company, which is pretty good. I mean, that has a couple of scout sections that have the, you know, a tow and a scout in each one. He had 4 Abrams, which I believe he upgraded to the IPM-1, which makes even front shots for my toes hard because the front armor of a M1 IP Abram is 19, and my normal toes, because I didn't upgrade to toe 2s, is just 21. So the only way he fails from the front is by rolling a 1, and he equals on an armor roll of a 2. I'm going to have to be looking for side shots on those Abrams. He also had a mortar platoon and an M109 artillery battery. I think 4 Cobras. Yeah, 4 Cobras. 4 Sergeant Yorks. That was his only AA besides his helicopters. And then a mechanized platoon in M113s. So, not a bad list. He's got some punch to it. Really, the Abrams are the main punch of that list. There are 4 of them in one platoon, and that's his entire reserve. I'm sure that's why he did it. That's a very popular tactic at a lot of tournaments, is you try to have one expensive platoon, so you only need to make 1 reserve roll, and your entire force is on the table, rather than having to piecemeal it in like me with 3 or 4 units in reserve, depending on how we go. I did the same reserves as I did last game, so I'm waiting for my Pattons to come on. So with his Abrams off the field and my Pattons off the field, the first few turns are really kind of static. We're looking, for artillery templates, and my 2-tube artillery is not going to do much. We're sniping with toes across the river. My LAV toes are trying to snipe his toes in the scout section. I did get some good rolls and did manage to nail a couple, but still, it's kind of a slow pace until heavier stuff came in. Now, one excitement is I did roll early and get my Wolverines in the battle, and I threw them into the only building they could, legally take, because they have to be 4 inches away from a defending team to be able to be placed if they're in concealment, in a building next to his AA. Now, this is one of the reasons why I included that militia unit, those Wolverines, in my list, was to go after these targets. I'll say soft targets, but these are Sergeant Yorks, so they're not that soft. But over 2 turns, I popped that ambush there in his unit. I was able to kill, I think, 3 of the Sergeant Yorks out of the 4. And no, I think they only killed 2. I think a Cobra got a third. Before they were run down by infantry and shot up really bad, and then broke their morale and ran. But they did what they had to do. They killed, they severely crippled the AA for my opponent, and that means my planes are going to have a better chance. Now, he did deploy his Cobras to counter my Cobras, and we had several turns of this. His Cobras, I think, shot down one of my Cobras, and then I brought in my Harriers and my Cobras and anti-helicopter on my LAVs, and managed to shoot down 3 of his over the turn. But that last one would go on to cause me trouble. I think it killed my mortars. I think it killed most of my ITV. But again, we're waiting for reserves to come in before we try to make it across the river, and there's only a few places to make it across the river. With the armor of my forces really trying to swim across the river, where he's got infantry and dragon teams covering the crossing, and ITVs and things like that. It's not it's not an ideal breakdown. So I did bring in Pattons. They did kill an ITV, the scout section with an ITV and scout. He did bring in his Abrams, push them across the river. Like I said, they really didn't have too much to fear from the front. And he did end up assaulting my objective on the left-hand side. Now, I did have my Pattons nearby, and I did have my Apaches on the other, my Cobras. I keep calling them Apaches in this battle. Cobras on the other side of the Abrams. But he did manage to assault, push back my infantry, but not enough to take them off the objective. And at that point, there was only about 10 minutes left in the round. Cobras killed one Abrams. I think they bailed out another. I had enough that my Pattons could dash onto the objective, my LAVs could dash onto the objective, my infantry could still push. So, my troops weren't going anywhere for at least 2 or 3 turns. Even if I didn't kill a single additional Abrams, he was going to need a few turns to clear that objective before he could win. Time ran out, and I believe it was a 2-3. I think ultimately, although I heard a lot of stuff, I only killed the 2 scout sections completely, whereas I lost a couple of LAV and platoons, as well as I think my HQ platoon. So in that case, it was just a 2-3 draw. So at the end of the day, I had a victory, a loss, and a draw, giving me, I think, 11 points total. And at an event like that, I'll be happy with that kind of shakedown. I did get my win, I did get my loss. I had 3 fun games. The opponents were all great, so any frustration you hear in my voice is not directed towards my opponents at all. I didn't like the board or encounter, but the flip side of that is, if you're playing a game like this, you have to have a solution when missions like this come up. And my solution didn't pan out. So if I had managed to, unlimited time, I think I would have been able to knock out the Abrams on my objective, because he really had nothing to stop my Cobras from firing toes at the rear of those Abrams while they're assaulting the infantry, and the Pattons were close enough to knife fight them. But it would have been tough. I probably would have lost all my Pattons, or close to it, lost a lot more infantry. And then pushing against his side, I probably eventually could have done that. He had one mech platoon pretty much locking down a objective, but the other one was pretty light. I think it just had the M109s over there on it. So eventually I could have made it over there maybe and done something. But that would have taken many turns, which, in a tournament environment you don't have, which you have to plan for. So overall, a really fun first day. By this third game too, I was exhausted. I was pretty tired and sore, but it was great. I got to get together with Sean and Mark, and we had a little AAR discussion and talked about our victories and our defeats, and that's always fun. That's one of my my most favorite parts of tournaments like that, is hearing the adventures of my friends and their battles, because a lot of times I'm just as invested in them as I am in my own outcome. But a lot of fun. So there you go. After the first round, after the first day, a victory, a loss, and a draw. As far as how my force performed, now I never played with this force. I painted it last minute. I painted over half of it, that week. So I didn't get any practice games in it. So everything was theory crafting when I built my list. So did I learn anything through 3 games playing with it? And I think I did. So, LAVs are cheap enough that you can throw them out and tempt people to shoot at them to remove gone to ground or things like that. And it's not that bad a deal. As long as you remember your core formation and keep, at least 2 or 3 platoons safe, you're going to be fine. And they've got enough firepower. They've got like 3 shots with the 25 millimeter cannon. So they hurt APCs, they just punch right through most APCs. And then they do have 4 machine gun shots. So they are, dangerous against infantry out in the open. So they're not bad. And with anti-helicopter, they can In this last battle, I think they shot down 1 helicopter. So they really do have a lot of utility. The Cobras, by far, were a standout unit on day 1. Like I said, in round 2, they were killing T-55s left and right. Here, they managed to kill in round 3 an Abrams. I think they killed one of the Sergeant Yorks. They shot down a couple of helicopters. So, they're pretty good. The Harriers also did stellar work, gunning down and trying to bomb. But in turn 3, they didn't do too much. Turn 2, they were pretty helpful. Round 2, they were pretty helpful. And in round 1, they were awesome. One of my favorite cinematic moments would be those 2 Apaches pop up to shoot at me, and 4 Harriers just do a strafing run on the Apaches and just totally annihilate them, which was a lot of fun. So there you go, guys. That is day 1 of Shifting Sands. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please do consider giving a like and subscribe. Like I mentioned at the top of the video, day 2 is going to be a separate video, and that's going to be exclusive to my Patreons as well as my YouTube members. So if you want to hear that and watch that, you can hop on over to Patreon, look at our Patreon, or click that join button and see what we got here on YouTube for that. So again, I do appreciate you guys for watching. If any of my opponents or Shifting Sands people are watching, thanks so much. It was a great first day, and I had a wonderful time. So there you go. Thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.